Yo, I'm Troy. This is TM Fitness. Are you experienced? No, I'm not talking about Jimi Hendrix. Exercise. What is your level of exercise experience? For the most part in this video, I'm going to be talking about gym-based exercises, strength and conditioning mainly. We often talk about people who are novice, intermediate, or advanced level. Most recreational athletes cannot call themselves advanced. That's the more kind of expert to elite level. So what is the difference between novice and intermediate, and how long are you a novice for? So it's about having competence and confidence, and you develop that with consistency. So it's the 3 C's. So I would say a typical recreational exerciser, the kind of person that goes to the gym, if you've been exercising consistently for at least a year, and when I say consistently, I don't just mean going to the gym consistently, I mean doing the same kinds of exercises consistently as well. Because it's about achieving mastery in, particularly with the compound exercises, achieving or approaching mastery with your main exercises. So if you're changing your workouts every week, you're not going to get that. You're also not going to get very good results because you're just not being consistent with, and you're not going to get the adaptations physiologically that you're looking for, because you're not creating a consistent stimuli by which to create a situation where your body's forced to make those adaptations. So a novice exercise would be somebody that goes to the gym for a year to 18 months, I would say. If you're doing strength exercises, you're looking at the main compound exercises here. Most recreational exercises go to the gym and they use the resistance machines, which are fine and they have their place. And you can get fairly good results using resistance machines, but there's certain limitations there. A lot of people don't use, when they're using the machines, they rely on the machine a little too much. You're kind of limited by the range of motion available to the machine rather than the range of motion available to you. And of course, you're not necessarily bracing and putting tension into the right muscle groups and controlling the motions as you are often forced to do with free weights. So let's say, for example, you're training like a power lifter. So you're using barbells. Your power lifters base all their workouts around the 3 main lifts because they're the competition lifts, which are deadlift, squat, and bench press. Now, even if you're not a competition power lifter, but you're training like a power lifter to get, strength gains and some muscle gains, you need to be training those 3 lifts every week, probably at least 3 times a week. So that a beginner's program lends itself quite nicely to a 3-day per week linear progression where you're training those 3 lifts, probably in a different order, 3 times a week. So you're training the whole body 3 times a week, and you're doing that for at least a year, probably 18 months. After about a year or so, if you've been consistent with that, you'll probably start to reach some sticking points in terms of your progress, and then you can start playing around with exercise variations. So with the squat, for example, you can look at adding in some pause squats to improve your stability coming out of the hole, or split squats or front squats, or even lunges, box jumps even for a bit of power adaptation. Deadlifts, there's loads of variations of deadlifts. So in addition to the traditional deadlift, you've got sumo deadlift, Romanian deadlift, stiff leg deadlift, there's rack pull, single leg, staggered stance, all kinds of deadlift variations. And then of course, if you want to improve your squat and your deadlift, you probably should, or you almost certainly should be doing some hip thrusts and probably some hamstring curls as well, because it all helps. It's all complementary, and this could be stuff that you start to add into your accessory work. And then with deadlift, with the bench press, obviously you could do pauses, partial range, you could use dumbbell flat bench, you could use incline, decline, you could even start playing around with bands and chains and things like that. So there's lots of subtle variations in those 3 main exercises that you can include to expand your repertoire and improve your adaptations. By which point, by the time you're training like this, you can probably call yourself an intermediate exerciser. And then your intermediate, probably for most people indefinitely, you just move up that intermediacy from lower to upper intermediate. Once you get to that level of confidence and competence in those lifts, you can start adding in more complex exercises or more isolation exercises, and this is what sometimes when the machines come in handy. And then perhaps you move away from powerlifting style training to more of a bodybuilding style training, or maybe you have phases where you do a high volume, high rep and muscular endurance type training to get some hypertrophy and get some assistive strength adaptations in certain areas to iron out some of those strength imbalances. So you don't need to be jumping in at a very complicated, the high volume, high frequency and high variability bodybuilding style training plan if you haven't already established a good base of strength and a good understanding and good level of competence with the main compound lifts. And this is why a lot of people don't get results, because they get too far ahead of themselves. They don't nail down the basics before they move on to the more advanced stuff, or they're just not consistent enough. Obviously, I program this style of training with some of my clients. There's some training programs of that nature in my book, Sleep, Lift, Eat. But mostly my training, as you're probably aware, is with kettlebells, and it's a similar concept there. Like beginners, I always start them off with 3 lifts, and that's Turkish get up, goblet squat and swing. And even with the swing, we build that up. We start with a basic bodyweight hip hinge, then we add weight and turn it into a deadlift. And then when I'm confident that they understand and are competent with the deadlift, then we can start making it more ballistic and turn it into a swing. Goblet squat is just a case of improving the movement pattern as a whole, and then adding weight and getting stronger doing it. The Turkish get up is a far more complicated exercise. There's a lot of components to it, so we break it down into its constituent parts and strengthen each part of it and build it back up to the full thing, by which time they're already much stronger and have much better mobility. And you could probably train those 3 lifts as the main component of your training for probably 6 months before you need to start looking at more complex kettlebell movements. I've got a blog that is going up on my website very shortly this week, which explains more about progressing your kettlebell training. But this whole video, I hope, is giving you something to think about. If you've got any questions, put it in the box. We're looking, just to summarize it, your level of competence would dictate the level of the amount of volume, intensity and variety and frequency of your training. Start simple, get good at the basic stuff before you make things more complicated, and be consistent, because if you're not being consistent, you're never going to get the results you're looking for. And that's why most people just go around in circles and they don't get the results they're looking for. And this is why it's always a good idea to hire a coach. Laters.